We have Mr. Peter Schweizer on the phone with us. Hello, Peter. How are you?
Hey, it's great to be on with you. Thanks for having me, Bill.
I have been waiting to have this interview, and I know we're doing a longer, in-depth interview next week and a chalkboard and everything else to show all of the connections to China, and it's disgusting. We are committing suicide, aren't we?
Well, our elites are committing suicide, right? I begin the book talking about Vladimir Lenin's prediction about, the capitalists will sell us the rope by which we'll hang them. He talked about how the elites were going to be deaf, dumb, and blind in the light of what the Soviets were doing. Of course, the Soviets couldn't afford to do it. They didn't have any money to buy off people in the West. China does, and what Lenin predicted is absolutely happening. The American elites, large numbers of them, are selling out the country for personal profit and because they have this kind of affection for the dictatorial model that Beijing follows.
So that is something that people don't understand. I'm going to get into some of the meat of this, and we're going to start with Joe Biden. But first, I think you need to explain, because people will say, why would these capitalists want to be in bed with these guys? Why would they want this to spread even over here?
Well, it's a great question. I mean, if you look at China, China is not really a Marxist country, but they're a Leninist country. And what I mean by that is, they have companies, they have corporations, and they have a very powerful elite that governs things. So the elite not only is rich, but they also have political power. In the United States, it's slightly different. It doesn't mean that rich people don't have political power, but it's more broken up. That was the genius of the founders. What you find is with guys like Bill Gates, guys like Elon Musk, I quote them extensively in the book. They actually like the Chinese system. The Chinese system's more efficient. They get things done more effectively. One guy says, they know how to get things across the finish line. Dictatorship has that example. So when you look at a guy like, Bill Gates or Elon Musk or, some of the big guys on Wall Street that I name, do they really need the money? No. I mean, Bill Gates is worth more than $100 billion, but there's this notion, this sense that China knows how to govern and address world problems better than the United States does. That's what I think part of the reason is they get in bed with them, because they feel like there's kind of this joint effort in tackling these global problems.
So, but how do they shut their eyes to the atrocities in China?
Very simply, they either explain them away or ignore them or believe that there are other bigger problems. One of the things I talk about in the book is, the issues related to climate change, not getting into the whole debate of real, what causes it. But, China has very effectively said, if you bring up human rights, we're not going to cooperate with you on climate change. And that's actually part of a strategy I outline in the book, how the origins of the Paris Climate Accord really came from a Chinese United Front group. The point is that they turn a blind eye because they feel like there are, quote unquote, bigger problems to tackle, ignoring the fact that the very nature of the Chinese regime is the reason we can't trust them to keep their word. They ignore that, and that's the calculation that they've made. We're going to ignore the internment of the Uyghurs. We're going to ignore human rights violations. We're going to ignore the fact that they covered up the COVID virus, leading to millions of additional global deaths because of the conduct. They're going to ignore all that because they feel like President Xi and what China wants is common cause with them on a lot of these issues. And by the way, they can make a lot of money at the same time.
So you said that this is the most disturbing work you've ever done, the most disturbing personally to you, and you think it's the most disturbing message to put out. Can you give me a bit more on that feeling and why?
Sure. Glenn, you and I have known each other for a very long time. And we've talked a lot about corruption. We've talked about insider trading in the stock market by members of Congress. We've talked about Hillary Clinton. We've talked about the Bidens.
The Bushes.
Those are all the Bushes. Absolutely. Those are all, in important individual cases. what we're dealing here is with a entire class of people. I mean, if you look at the section on Silicon Valley in the book, you've got Google, you've got Zuckerberg, you've got Bill Gates, you've got Elon Musk. These are the most powerful people in Silicon Valley, and they all say the most outrageous things about the Chinese regime.
Will you do me a favor? Because I think this one story about Zuckerberg meeting President Xi with his wife is truly unnerving.
Yeah, so Zuckerberg has a long history of kowtowing to Beijing. Zuckerberg, of course, is married to a woman who's ethnically Chinese. He meets President Xi at a state dinner that then President Barack Obama is holding in 2015. Zuckerberg, obviously eager to do business in China, ends up doing some deals in China, goes up to President Xi at this state dinner with his wife, who is pregnant, and he asks the dictator of China if he would provide a name for his child. A Chinese name. He's going to have an American name, but also have a Chinese name. Will you name my child? To me, that is really disturbing because, first of all, he's a dictator. He's this oppressive guy. But second of all, this is a very personal thing. This is the naming of your child. And he's asking Xi to do it. And Xi basically says, oh, that's too great a responsibility. Even Xi thinks this is creepy in my mind and says, no, thank you. I'm not going to do it. But there are multiple examples with Zuckerberg. And another one is the head of the Chinese Communist Party propaganda department visits Facebook headquarters, and of course Zuckerberg gives him the tour. Then he takes him into his office. Zuckerberg takes him into his executive office where the propaganda chief sits down, and he notices a familiar book, a 500-page book, sitting on Zuckerberg's desk. It's the collected speeches and statements of China's President Xi. And the propaganda chief picks it up and says, oh, this is interesting. And Zuckerberg tells him, oh, yes, I'm reading it, and I'm having all the senior executives in my company read this so they can understand socialism with Chinese characteristics. What kind of tech executive does that? To me, it's very disturbing, and it's not just pandering. It speaks, I think, to a deeper problem with a lot of these people.
It reminds me an awful lot of IBM in the 1930s. We're talking to Peter Schweizer. He is the author of Red-Handed. It comes out today. The real meat is all about China, but the one that will capture a lot of people's attention, of course, not the press at all, is Peter is the guy who broke the story in 2018 of Hunter Biden's massive business deals in China made while Joe Biden was vice president. They said that, oh, well, he didn't really make a lot of money on that, blah, blah, blah. Peter has new details. Peter has the laptop, and he has gone through it with a fine-tooth comb. It's not the whole book, and that should really disturb you. It is a portion of the book on the Bidens, and he's going to give that to us in 60 seconds. The book that is coming out today, Red-Handed, How American Elites Get Rich, Helping China Win, with Peter Schweizer. Okay, so Peter, you broke the story in 2018. Nobody paid attention, said it was conspiracy. They said that he didn't really make any money. You now have the goods that not only did he make a lot of money, but his father was directly involved in these business dealings with the highest levels of the Chinese party.
Yeah, I mean, this is the interesting and I think very troubling evolution of the story. You and I talked about this when the book came out in 2018, and it was a story of cronyism and corruption and self-dealing by American politician Joe Biden. What we did was take the new material, which are the email collections of a couple of Hunter Biden's business partners, the laptop itself, Secret Service travel records that was released by the U.S. Senate. And what we really wanted to find out, Glenn, is how did these deals happen in China? How does a guy who's the son of a vice president go to China and line up these deals?
No. Wait. Not just the son of a vice president. An out-of-control drug user, a guy who is a very risky bet on any level, get those meetings.
Yes, very, very important point to make. You're exactly right. So we wanted to know who opened these doors in China. And what we found by going through the emails is that there were basically 5 deals that the Biden family got. And there were a collection of businessmen that opened those doors. And each one of those businessmen has direct ties to the highest levels of Chinese intelligence. So for example, the Bohai Harvest deal, BHR, that we talked about, this is the private equity deal. Hunter gets on this board seat. He has no background in finance. One of the guys that made that happen is a Chinese businessman, kind of sketchy guy named Che Feng. Che Feng at that time was business partners with the vice minister of state security in China, a guy named Ma Jian. Ma Jian was in charge of the so-called Number 8 Bureau, and his responsibilities included recruiting foreigners to spy for China. He had additional responsibility for North American intelligence operations.
Good.
That's the first businessman that is opening a door for Hunter Biden, puts him on the board of this private equity fund. His valuation ownership is around $20 million for basically doing nothing. The second businessman that helps with that deal and then also sends another $5 million to another one of Hunter Biden's businesses is a guy named Mr. Zhao. Mr. Zhao, at the time, was business partners with the daughter of the former Minister of State Security, which is the guy that runs the entire spy apparatus for China. So you have those deals. And
this
then
would be
have,
like, wait. This would be like getting President Xi's son business deals, and they have all been brokered by the head of the FBI, CIA, and NSA. Am I wrong?
Correct. That's exactly right. Or use a Cold War example. Imagine if we would have tolerated in the Cold War, Harry Truman's daughter, or Eisenhower's kids getting deals with people directly tied to the head of the KGB. I mean, it's unfathomable, but that's exactly where we are. So we trace these deals back, Glenn. It's all sourced in the book. It's all open source information. But in sum, the Bidens got 5 deals totaling some $31 million. And every single one of those deals traced back to individuals with links to the highest levels of Chinese intelligence. And the part that is important that you touched on at the beginning is this is not just a Hunter Biden story, because the other thing that is revealed by these new email collections is that Hunter Biden was getting money from foreign sources, and he was sharing that money with his father. In fact, there are messages where Hunter's complaining to other family members saying, I have to give half my money to Pop, meaning his dad. And you could say, well, maybe it's just, he's on drugs or he's just mad. But that assertion is supported by the emails. And you find that Hunter Biden is paying for repairs and renovations on Joe Biden's property up in Delaware. This is when Joe Biden is vice president of the United States. He's paying for things like his monthly phone bill. I mean, we found tens of thousands of dollars. I'm sure there's a lot more. He is effectively subsidizing his father's lifestyle, and he's using foreign money to do it. And by the way, that is not legal. If you are a politician, you can accept occasional gifts from family members, but family members and their businesses cannot subsidize your lifestyle and pay your bills. But that's precisely what Hunter Biden has been doing for Joe Biden. It's directly linked to these foreign deals that he's making.
So we have a president who is compromised on almost every front. He says that Donald Trump was compromised by Vladimir Putin, except everything that Donald Trump did with Vladimir Putin did not work to Putin's advantage. Here, the case is dramatically the opposite. But we're living in a time now where, because of China and because of Biden, the press isn't going to. I mean, this is the most stunning, illegal, clearly un-American activity I have ever seen produced outside of the guy who was actually a spy for the FBI, I remember his name, that was arrested during the Reagan administration. It's that kind of level, and no one's going to talk about it. Nothing's going to happen, Peter.
Well, here's the thing we have to keep in mind. We have to keep in mind that the American people did not know a lot about this. Remember, in the 2020 election, they suppressed when the New York Post first started running stories about the laptop. I believe, and I think it's the reason, Glenn, you get out of bed in the morning and come to work, is the American people cares about these things. And there are enough people in Washington, elected people in Washington, whether they believe in the republic or whether they simply want to keep their jobs. When the American people rise up and raise this as an issue that is important to them, it cannot be ignored. And the important thing to keep in mind is that Joe Biden, in his presidency, is doing what Beijing wants to do. Now, it's important to keep in mind, people will say, well, Joe Biden, he put this diplomatic boycott for the Olympics, or, he criticized them for the Uyghurs. One of the things I point out in the book is the Chinese have a concept called big help with a little bad mouth. As long as you're doing the big things to help them, if you say some negative things, they're not worried about it.
Holy cow. Peter Schweizer, we will talk to you next week. You will be in studio with us. We're going to spend the morning with you. And then next week's Wednesday night special, Red-Handed, we'll have it all on a chalkboard for you. That's next week. The book is available now. It's a must-own, Red-Handed by Peter Schweizer.